Hey everyone, welcome back. Bar Exam Drills podcast. Brandon and I are back. We're going to talk about this 1390 retroactivity and why it's important to have an episode about it, because I mentioned it to a friend and he had no idea how it worked and that the order even came through. So they're not letting anybody that's affected by this know, and a podcast would be good to let people know and you can share it, because I think there is a deadline on this, and this episode will figure out if there is a deadline where if you don't make it, then the opportunities pass to get your license. We're going to pull up the order here. And so this order came down on the January the 28th, 20 days after result from the exam. So a lot of people who thought they were taking the exam, and unfortunately if you did take the exam, don't think about it that way. It's gone. It's in your past. Like if you took this past February exam and you know about this too late, it's fine. If you've gotten 1390 in the past all the way to July 2015, you qualify for this. And it's basically 300 hours under a supervised attorney. And so I'm going to scroll this order on the screen, and Brandon and I will look at it to see if there's any important points that you should know.
So one of the interesting is that, they initially had a 400-hour requirement for people between July 2017 and February 2020, and a 600-hour requirement for 1390 between July 2015 and February 2017, but they removed it and put it like, just 300 hours for everybody. That's fine. We don't need to do all that. Instead of the 400 and 600 hours, they said 300 hours for everybody, which is interesting because
there's 7 justices, right? California.
There's 7 justices, and that's the cool thing about the California Supreme Court. It is really diverse.
Like you see Lou, right?
Yeah. A Chief Justice, I'm not even trying to say her name, but
that looks Japanese at the end.
Yeah, so it's cool though, because one of these guys too was 44 when he became a justice, or something like that, something crazy, like 45, and it's just cool because just to see them all like, A, be given opportunities at a younger age, and B, super diverse. But interesting enough though about California, and this is totally off topic from this, is that people of Latinx descent origins make up 60%, is it 40% of the population, and only 6% of the lawyers. That's a crazy statistic.
But I was on Clubhouse the other day, and somebody said that.
It's a crazy
that there really
statistic.
just isn't that many lawyers. And then nationally or something like that, it's only 3%.
Okay, I didn't know that one.
Yeah, maybe I made that up.
I believe you. I mean, think about it. California has the most people of Latinx descent, and it's only 6%. So you have, nationally, that makes sense. 100%.
It was a Latinx mentorship clubhouse, and this guy was like in Kansas or something. And he said that he initially wanted to do this, but because he's the one Latinx guy in all of, wherever this was, Kansas or whatever, he's like, I'm doing criminal law, I'm doing like everything right now because I just have so many clients.
Because culturally they can connect, and the experiences may be entirely different, but it's someone who looks like me, talks like me, acts like me, and it's like there's that connection. It was funny, I was talking to an attorney yesterday. She just passed the bar, and she said, like, the problem is she's like, you go into an office and you're sitting there in front of this old guy who doesn't understand your life and your history, and doesn't really care about it because he just wants you to pay him and he just wants to get your case taken care of. But there's something to be said for people who can understand your history and your origins and make you feel better. And it's interesting because, like, for me, one time I had my sleeve, right?
Yeah.
And a client took off his face mask, drink some water real fast, and his lip has a tattoo on his lip, and he looked at me and he said, I know, man, he's all, please don't think anything bad of it. First of all, I said, I'm sleeved up, you know that. Second of all, a lip tattoo, I said, I just got to ask it to hurt. That's all I care about.
Right.
Cares? He's like, it did. I'm like, man, that doesn't define you. It's funny because I don't think I had ever given off that impression. Obviously, now I have to reflect on my own conduct and how I make people feel right. But this man felt that way. Mm-hmm. And that was never my intention. I'm glad he brought it up because I was able to clarify, like, don't worry about it, I don't care. Mm-hmm. But it's just interesting, I said, because we suck at perceiving other people's emotions unless we ask and let their thoughts. Like, we just suck at it. We can think we can read people like a book, and we can't. We never know what someone thinks about us, right, or what they're thinking about how we make them feel. So I think representation is very important because it helps people feel like, even if they experiences are different, right? Even if, as my grandma's from Mexico and I'm a second generation, I'm not new to this country, right? But even as someone who has an immigrant grandmother, they might just feel better knowing that, because it's like you can understand a little bit of that. My family county had to come here and build new. That's what my grandma had to do. My grandma didn't know English when she was 14. It comes down to, like I said, representation and having that. So that's crazy numbers, more inclusion. So the interesting part is the supervising attorney. Have you seen that part of it all?
No, I do have the supervising attorney declaration.
It's also in the rules right here, though. It's under I, and it says I-1, page 10.
Yes. Oh, page 10.
Yeah.
Wow. It's like way down there.
Right, yeah.
I was like way up there. Page 10, yes.
So I thought this one was interesting, though, because when you're in law school, to have a supervising attorney to become a certified law student,
yes,
you have to have an attorney with 5 years of practice. And this one's 4. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and I was thinking it's related to, I still don't know why. Because
maybe the mindset is that you've gotten this far, you finished law school, you passed the bar, you need a little less supervision. But I'm like, it's still like, it's just an interesting thing for me. It's like
the difference you mean between 5 and 4?
Yeah. Maybe because they require, because at that point, you should have sat for the bar at some point. You finished law school. Maybe they're like, the attorney doesn't have to supervise you as much. But I still think it's interesting because you're still having an attorney put their license in the line for somebody else. It's an interesting process. I think it's good, though, because I think it also paves the way for a lot more enough attorneys with X amount of experience who want to do this. So if you lower that bar and you have people who want to supervise, for example, like me, I'm still too new to do it. But like in 2 years, if I had been my 4-year mark and someone says, hey, I scored a 1390, I would love to supervise them. I scored a 1390 because I would have loved to help somebody get there, and it would have sucked to have to say, no, I can't do it because I'm a year short of it. It sucks now that I can't do it, but it's helping someone
weird.
Get there.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up too, it's weird they must have some reasoning behind them.
Right.
Between why wouldn't they just keep it 5 years? And the other delineation is, why are they applying 1390 back to July 2015? Why July 2015?
It almost always feels arbitrary. We're always like, these dates and times feel arbitrary. I've pondered on this a little bit, and I think the whole point is that they can't go back a decade, right? Because, for example, there's people who took it in 2010 probably passed it by now, but they probably try to say, all right, they probably looked at a bunch of tests and say, how many people have been repeaters over this period and haven't passed at the 1440, but they passed the 1390, right? Because there's people who repeatedly get like a 1400, 1400, 1400, and they may have seen the statistics and said, okay, so between 2015, July 2015, and February or whatever it was, the actual day, these people have scored. There's an average of, if you've taken the bar 5 times, you scored 3 or 4 times, you've gotten the 1390. So they may have said that's the reasonable deadline to cut it off. And if they go back further again, it's kind of like now there's going back further, there's people who may have just given up altogether. So it's setting that so far back, he's saying, oh, we're going to go back a decade. And you have these people who have just not followed through with the law. They don't care anymore. So it's like, do you want to have, this may be their mindset. No, I can't speak
I
to it.
actually saw that I should have bookmarked that as well, and I still might. I'll add it to this document. I think it was Bloomberg wrote an article, and they had a specific number of who it applies to, and it said something like 2,000 are affected by this now.
Right.
Are eligible. 2,000. So maybe in pulling back the number of July 2015, it's like, okay, we don't want to go over 2,000 people.
Right.
Like, given the fact that not all will take up this opportunity.
That's that point too. And it's like, if they gone back further and let's say it becomes 4,000, is there going to be enough attorneys to supervise them? Like willing to do it? So they might have considered all those different factors. Again, I'm sure they put some reason to this. The crazy part though is that they actually did it. Like, that's the crazy part more than anything, that they said, we're going to go back 5 years and let these people have a chance.
So when it first came out, we were thinking, you remember how they had all these lawsuits about, I think it was like a student from some of these schools that would sue their own law school about job prospects or something like that. There was a bunch of those. And I was thinking, this is going to cause some kind of lawsuit, right?
Oh, for sure.
But then I was talking with one of our partners that there's this kind of consideration thing going. When an offer is put out there, right? You need consideration at the time of the offer, and then you accept it. So back then, in 2015, all the way up to now, the consideration was 1440. So as we know, what is it? What's the rule? Past consideration is not valid. So now that they make this decision, you can't do anything about that because the consideration wasn't for 1390.
Right.
I don't know if that's a valid legal argument or how that works, but it seems to make sense, doesn't it? That's what I kind of wanted to tell you about too. I was thinking about it.
Again, I really don't know how they got to the 1440 number. It's obviously not been a good number. I say that just in the pass rates, right? Like I said, when I passed, I think it was a 23% pass rate, and that was the lowest in California history. It can't speak to the quality of people taking it. It just can't. What is the issue? Is it the actual test takers or is it the number? And I've mentioned this in the past. passed. If we correlate test scores, it was California was a 144 and New York was a 137. And New York's laws are just as complex as California's. We have a overly complex system in California, and New York does too, right? And someone said, it wasn't a public law article, I have my qualms with them, but this was a good article. It said, are you telling me, and the writer, I think she said, are you telling me that there's a bunch of attorneys in New York who are not qualified attorneys based on California standards? And she put, that's obviously not true. And it's obviously not true. So it's an interesting thing that the score is so high. She's like, because you would have all these attorneys in New York who would not be qualified to practice in California based on bar pass scores. And it's an interesting thing. And I wonder if that has played into it too. You know, like, what is the difference? Again, I don't think by any means that a New York attorney is not qualified to be a California attorney. Again, though, it's just these numbers. And we are a very populous state, but again, so is New York. Because it's curved, someone has to fail always. But it's like, do we really want 80% of people taking it failing? It's like, do we really want that?
Right. Crazy thing is, New York, which had a 65% pass rate in February, jumped up to 85% with the online exam. And California number nowhere near jumped that high. It jumped 5%, but it jumped from 55 to 60, but we also had the lowering to 1390. So, which New York did not have any lowering of any kind. So it is very interesting.
No, and I think that has something to do with the way it's done too, though. Obviously, I don't live in New York, but a ton of people, and probably the stresses of getting to the exam site in the morning, traffic. I wonder if people just felt better not having to go to that in New York because they did their remote exam versus California. I mean, this time around in July 2020, there was supposed to be a test site in Palm Springs by where I live. So it's interesting because there's more opportunity for people and it's less stress to get to these exam sites. And I think still in California, no matter how much we think about it, how much we want to think it's better, 1390 is a lot lower. It's 50 points lower. It's a great change. But people are still thinking, now it's, oh my God, it's a 1390. If I can't pass this, I suck. Right? It's gone from 1390 to, as a great thing, as it's like, oh my God, if I can't even do it after they give me 50 less points to pass with, I can't do it at all. In fact, for me, I would have failed the first time still. I laugh at it because I'm like, I still would have failed. I don't care though.
Right.
So I think that's the same thing too.
I talked to someone. I said, so what do we do? Do we do a podcast? Because in a way you pass now. It applies to you. So you're a lawyer with this thing now. And that's where I came up with that whole consideration legal theory. And he responded right away. And it really made me think is he said two things that were really important. He said, first thing he said was, I thank God that I don't have to do this exam ever again. And then the second thing he said is, I don't want to do anything in any way until I get that license in my hand. And it struck me as like someone who's had an abuser for so many years.
Right.
What do you millennials say? It hit you in the feels, or whatever you say. It really hit me in the feels. Like they had an abuser for so long that they thank God that they never have to be abused again. And they don't want to do anything. They don't feel sure until make sure that abuser's gone.
Right.
Am I over dramatizing it?
No, not at all. And the truth is, like, I've talked to multiple people about this. It's not even a sense of excitement or joy when you pass the bar. It's a sense of relief. Like, I don't have to do this again. Like, that's what it is. Like, there's no, like, you see videos of people crying. I'm like, half the time wondering, are they crying because they don't have to do it again?
Totally. There was a famous one again, this bar cycle.
I'm like, are you crying because you have to do it again? Because that's how it wasn't even about, like, being happy I passed. I mean, I was happy, but it was just like, oh, thank God I don't have to do it again. I don't have to sit down and study again, take time off from work, and just focus on basically cut out life and sit there. It's a sense of relief. So I think for people who are being told now you qualify to be an attorney, it's probably a sense of relief, but it's probably not, because as quickly as they change their mind, there's probably that concern they could change their mind again. Now there'd be some due process issues, right? Now there'd be definitely some issues they went retroactively try to again take it back. But for some people who have spent over and over, and I mean, I'm imagining it's more of just, I don't have to do this again. I don't have to sit there and tell my family again that I failed. Because I'm sure for some people, this is delayed life, failing the bar. It's delayed life. It's delayed opportunities. I remember when I took the bar the second time after we met, I was taking it, and I remember I met someone and he had told me that he had literally taken the bar once or twice, get stopped after the second time, opened a property management business. He says, I've been really successful with this. He's like, but I just want to pass the bar. He's like, I worked so hard for my JD. He's like, I just want to pass the bar. So it's like I said, like it always lingers over people's head, even people who are successful in other fields. Like he said, he's like, I do really well as a property manager. And I always thought about that. He's always thought in my mind, I hope he passed it that time. Or now retroactively, I guess. Said, like, he's like, it's always lingered in the back of my head.
Right.
As much as people, everyone tells you in your family, it's okay if you don't pass, it's okay, are you going to pass? It's like, it's not even about passing or failing. We worked so damn hard for this, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, by the way, you didn't meet the cut score, so try again. So
Christine, our friend, she talks about that in her podcast episode, that feeling of what else do you want me to do? You did all this stuff and it's not, no, it doesn't make it. It's really, not to be an annoying older guy, but it really does, feels is more of a good thing, right?
I mean, yeah, it's like
it gets you in the feels.
It gets you, it makes you very emotional. But no, it is. I can imagine it is. For me, like I think I told you, I was going to do 3 times and I was just going to move on after that.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I can't wait for life to finish forever. I can't wait to start life forever. I had my son, so I was like, I'll figure this out. But it's kind of what it is,
I probably would have kept on annoying you.
I mean, and I say that, right? I say that, like, I would have given 3 tries, but I'm also very stubborn when it comes to stuff like that, so I might not have. I think for me, it was fair to set an arbitrary 3 times to kind of set, and I think that put pressure on me. Like, you only got 3 tries, Brandon. So I think that was like an arbitrary number I set in my head to try to motivate me to do it,
I don't know how far we're going off of this, but my therapist actually asked me to do that too. But to me, it was just like, yeah, I could say that this is the last time, but you don't know how you'll feel. So like, why even say that now? Like, you say it to put more pressure. Like you just said, that was the motivation, was to say it to put the pressure. But I mean, yeah, okay, it puts some kind of pressure on, but ultimately you're going to make the decision with how you feel at the time, like after the exam or when you have to take it again. So it's not like you'll be like, I said it back then, so I'm going to stick to it. Well, maybe some people are like that, but maybe I guess I'm not like that. I'm open to change, I guess.
And I think it just depends too. It also depends where life is. I think, if I had been, say, it took the February 2019 and July 2019, I mean.
So the 1390 applied to me in July 2015. So I would have been a lawyer a long time ago. The very first date, which is why I was trying to figure out these dates, like why July 2015. And so I would have been a lawyer a long time ago, and I wouldn't have met you probably, not on this basis anyways. And
right.
So what does that mean exactly? Yeah,
And that's an interesting thought too. I'm a big fan of Stoic philosophy. There's a saying it says, not simply bear what is necessary, but love it. And you always have to wonder, was that failing necessary for who you are today? And if it was, you gotta love it. Because what it does do though is, I think for people who have passed this time, but who have also passed in the past, it shows that first off, you were always capable, right? And I think for some people, and I don't think you necessarily know how you feel. You'd have to tell me, but I think for some people, it'll make them feel better and show I was always competent and capable of doing this. It wasn't just, it could literally change some people's lives and their sense of self. But why July 15, who knows?
I think it's got to be that they're calculating, right? That's the only thing it could be.
You figured out with probably like 2,000 attorneys. It's like, at the same time too, I also wonder, now that I'm saying that 2,000 attorneys more in the legal field, how much are the state bar, the Supreme Court, taking into account the COVID situation? Because if you think about it, there's going to be a lot more landlord-tenant issues coming up in the next couple months or years. Right. And I wonder if they think, oh crap, there's a shortage of attorneys who are going to be able to do this type of stuff. And there's going to be a need for it, for more legal resources.
In one of the news articles that going around, it said that I think the Supreme Court or somebody from the state bar actually said that. They said in light of the pandemic and the need for more legal services, this provisional law license will allow for that. The first provisional law, not this expansion, but the first one that allowed all 2020 graduates to just get their license.
Mm-hmm. That rule was interesting in and of itself, which I thought was a good opportunity for people. But like I said, I wonder if they realized, oh no, we need more lawyers out here. And it's not even, in California, probably doesn't need more lawyers, realistically, but I think it's probably, we need more affordable lawyers. Because we talked about this in the past, lawyers are expensive, and make a joke that I couldn't afford myself, like an hour, like I bill $300 an hour when I practice law under civil litigation and family law, and any given case, I'll bill 10 hours a month. That's $3,000 that someone has to pay. And it's like 10 hours of work. That's it. Just so, there needs to be a lower cost for that. And I think they might have been thinking, all right, if we put 2,000 more lawyers out there, first off, there's more competition, so prices can't drive us up. There's this thing that lawyers, for some reason, raise their fees annually. And I'm just like, okay.
Based on their experience?
The experience, and I think just, what did someone tell me? Cost of living adjustment, or someone said like, and I'm just like, I guess, but why? Is your cost of living or is your market adjustment, is it based on because you decided to spend more? Or is it based on the fact that if you're in a lease, your lease go up and you're just the only attorney? Or is it just because your egos become more inflated and you think, oh, I'm a more experienced attorney now, you should pay me more? And so I don't think that way. The only reason my fee's gone up from where it was is because the firms that I'm associated with have billed me at that hour. So it's kind of hard to tell. I can't really undermine them when I do it, but like I said, I've taken on cases and I'll charge people less because, well, I can. So, but yeah, I think there's an access to more affordable lawyers, and I think the Supreme Court saw that. So I hope they saw that.
When they did have the tiered, getting back to that July 2015 kind of thing, when they did have that tiered, like 400 for this or whatever for this, I noticed that it was, at that time, it was on the July 2017 when it went to 2-day exam. It was tied to that. Let me ask you this then. This is an order. Do you by any chance know if there's like an opinion behind this that talks about the reasoning?
I doubt it. I haven't seen one. Most of the time, the administrative orders are just kind of like come out there. What I've seen, it's like with the whole COVID thing, but they've never justified why they've done whatever the Supreme Court has done with the emergency rules. And I'll be honest with you, they're not gonna. Personally, I don't think they would put it out there, no matter what, because they're not gonna. They don't want to open themselves up to scrutiny. I'm sure there was an extensive discussion between the justices about $300 versus 4 versus 6.
Right. And you know what? When things go for the better, there's no reason to talk about it. It's like you didn't get the more difficult thing. You're getting the more easier thing. So you can't complain.
Yeah, just leave it alone. We don't, and like I said, and the justices just might be like, we're not going to do this because we don't want to leave ourselves open to scrutiny. And they're just people too, and they're doing the best they can with what they have. And we have a system in place where the Supreme Court is the overseer of all these types of things. And I don't know if it's the best system, but it's our system. So, there's that saying with the Supreme Court of the United States, we're not final because we're infallible. We're infallible because we're final.
Robert H. Jackson.
Yes, and I always thought it was the most amazing quote in the world because it speaks to how our legal system works. The Supreme Court in California is not infallible, but they are infallible because they are final. So if they say, unless you're going to the United States Supreme Court, that's it, end of the road, And I always thought it was the best thing in the world.
Is that a bad thing, is what he's saying? Or he's saying
it depends.
He's saying kind of the effect of what he's saying, right? It's not really a bad thing. It's just saying how the effect of a Supreme Court's ruling, correct?
Mm-hmm. No, like I said, it's not a bad thing. It's just a matter of the Supreme Court's the law, final rule. So realistically, whether or not we thought the reasoning was proper, they said it. So that's it. They are infallible because they are the Supreme Court.
Right. They are the last. It doesn't go on for further discussion.
Right, and that's the one thing. It's interesting because I read that in an argument for originalism versus non-originalism. That's how that came up in the context. So I always thought it was very important to bear that in mind. I would like to see the reasoning if we ever got the opportunity, but I'm not going to hold my breath. It's a great opportunity for people. It is. There's so many people who just deserve the opportunity to be a lawyer, and there's so many people who deserve the opportunity to have access to justice and what they do and allow access to it with these programs. Because also too, you could have an attorney who wants to do more legal work, supervising a newer attorney, and that attorney might cost $400 an hour, but he's thinking, man, I have this new attorney, I can bill them out $100 an hour and offer more services to people, or 75. They're going to get their time. I'm going to make a little bit of money. They'll make a little bit of money, their hourly pay, and we'll just be able to provide services more,
Right.
And that itself is important. Now, that's the hope. Realistically, attorneys are probably going to build them out at $250, but there's opportunities there for good. So it should be interesting, though. Did you look at that little licensing declaration?
Yeah, I tried to go in and get all the exact forms we needed. Which part was interesting? IOTA?
Yeah, Yeah, I was
Okay,
surprised.
this is a great little tip that I heard. There's some kind of $75 fee
Mhm.
for the new attorney seeking licensing. And if you are not getting paid, right, and they
Mhm.
put that down in those 300 hours,
Right.
they'll waive that fee,
Okay.
which is pretty nice, I think.
Right. No, it is, because if you have someone who's going to work full time and then going to dedicate 8 hours on a Saturday just to build up their hours, it lets them just do that and not have to worry about covering the
Right.
costs. And
If they're making money as well, I guess you can do legal work, right?
right.
If they're making money as a lawyer, as like an associate, they want that
Well, they want their share.
legal fee. Well, they want that $75.
And I'm not gonna lie to you, it's a weird number too, because my bar fees are super high.
Right.
And so I'm thinking,
What
like,
is the bar fees these days? 500, right?
Yeah, it's 500 plus if you sign up for like the sections. Like I signed up for the family law section, so that tax on the 100, 115 on there.
Wow.
And I signed up for the family law section, even though I said I wasn't going to this year. I still did it because I was like, I'll do it again. They have some flexibility though. If you make less than a certain amount, they'll cut your fees by like 40%. And there's some flexibility in that, but they definitely don't.
How do you
hold
do
back.
that? Do you show your tax report?
You have to declare that it is that low. You have to keep a copy of your taxes if you are audited. They can't audit you. They don't usually do it.
Right.
And I think they probably look at 2 of the years in practice. I mean, if you have an attorney who's been practicing for 15 years and they're saying they're making less than $60,000, which is not, it's entirely a possibility.
Is that the threshold? 60,000?
Yeah, it's like 60 or 65,000, which is entirely a possibility because you could be a licensed attorney making less than 65,000 a year. It may refer to only attorney work, but I don't know if it refers to overall income, right? But if you're like, could be working for a nonprofit and been licensed 15 years and taking a pay cut because you went to work for a nonprofit and they're only paying you 48,000, right? So it's not impossible, but I'd imagine they audit somebody like that who had never before requested their bar fees be reduced.
Right.
But sometimes people do things like that because they just want to be happier and know what they're doing. I'd imagine that's when they audit somebody, is when it's like obviously different from the previous years. So, or the firm would pay PLL's application fee. It's like when the firms pay for your bar fees. So
Right. Or bar prep even. Which
Yeah.
is pretty cool.
I was lucky enough to have a law firm that helped me and supported me for bar prep. I was very lucky, and
Really cool.
yeah.
But then it also, this is an interesting thing, it also puts more pressure on you to pass, wouldn't you say? They pay for all this stuff. Is it kind of this, like, if you take this money, you better pass this thing?
Yeah, it definitely, it was weird. In my case, it didn't feel that way. But then after I passed, one of the attorneys told me if I hadn't, he wanted to fire me, which I didn't make any sense why he told me that, like, honestly, because I had passed. And I was just like, I don't know why he even told me this, but okay. So at that moment, I felt the pressure, but I had never felt it through taking the bar and passing.
Right,
But
right.
all of that, in that moment, I was a little bit younger. I was still trying to figure out where I was in this legal field, right? And still just finishing law school. And I was just like, overwhelming sense of pressure came over me. I was just like, why would you tell me that? Like, I passed.
Right.
You didn't need to tell me that. And then a sense of anger came over me immediately after, because I was like, well, screw you. Like,
Right.
you failed it twice.
Right.
I only failed it once. Like,
Right.
but people talk out. So.
It's true. I think it's so emotionally charged, right? In a way that, we were talking off the air about that whole empathy thing. Like if people do these things, there's something else that you want to think about that they may be going through where they say kind of really ridiculous things, right? Brandon?
No, for sure. Like I said, I shortly left that firm after, but I remember as I've gotten again past all that point though, now it's this mindset, be forgiving of others and strict of myself. And it helped because it's like, even with that lady, I told you earlier that it's just so mean and so difficult to deal with. I still don't hate her, and I'm strict with myself in how I respond to her, and she can do whatever she wants. Like I said, she requested a settlement conference, so I sent an email, hey, what does your client want? She didn't respond, okay, cool. But I did my thing. I didn't let her action or inaction affect me. I sent my email. And so I can say to the court when they ask you, why haven't you settled this? I can tell the court, I sent 2 settlement offers plus an email after I received notice of the request for settlement conference and trial, and I haven't received no response. So then that burden falls off my shoulders. Can I tell the court I did this? So
I think the other important thing is in the FAQ, provisional license FAQ document. I'm looking for a deadline to get this in by. I think that's the next. Oh, it says here too, number 6. What is a lawyer's IOLTA program?
oh yeah, so it's that. The interest generated by the IOLTA accounts collected by the State Bar's Trust Fund program and distributed to about 100 nonprofit legal legal aid organizations that provide civil, legal, indigent people.
But what I'm worried about is the actual, so 300 hours, 40 hours a week, I think is 7.5 weeks of work, right?
Right.
Let's just round up to 2 months. So if you found out about it right now, it would take you, well, I guess the actual application was available on the 24th. Let's say 2 months on the 24th, February, March. So you could be done 300 hours by April 24th, right? Okay. So almost May. And the deadline for this, I think there's a deadline.
How soon will applications for provisional license be available? Applications for 2020 graduates are now available in the admission applicant portal. Applications for the expanded program will be available starting on February 24th at 9 a.m. and must be submitted later than May 31st, 2021.
So that's the deadline, right?
Yeah.
Number.
I wonder if that'll get expanded for people who aren't keeping up with the bar news, though. If they'll push it out to like July, because how many people stop taking it and just haven't kept up with the bar?
Right. Or move to another state, whatever, right?
Just moved on, yeah. So, it should be interesting.
What do you think about that? Like, is that fair? Does it matter if it's fair?
Does it matter if it's fair? Not really. Is it fair, though? No. I think that applications should be open for a minimum of 6 months, personally. Ideally, I think a year, because, like I said, there's going to be so many people who passed it within that time who just stopped and moved on that will run across this by chance, but you don't run across things by chance until like later on down the road, Obviously setting a deadline because you don't want people coming back in 2025 saying, hey, I passed in 2015, I want to do this program now.
Right.
But at the same time, because we're also still in a pandemic, regardless of what anyone says, people may not be keeping up with this kind of stuff. People are just trying to worry about surviving. So I think setting that limited deadline to May 31st, while I understand they want to make sure they get this program rolling, I think it should be at least 6 months from the day they decided it or the application became available. So August 24th, 2021 at least? So because it helps people to see, have the chance to review it. Because at the same time too, what's also going to happen is you're going to see law schools sending out notices about these people, alumni, and all those different things. So there's just a lot of opportunity for the word to get out if you give it more time.
Well, so far, us. But yeah, I get it. That's the concerning part to me. How hard are they going to be with that deadline? They should have did a different point, right? Maybe like number 1, when is the deadline to do this?
Right.
Right now, it's under number 4, and it says, how soon will the application be available? It's
right.
not really...
It doesn't say your deadline to apply is this date. This is true lawyer fashion, though. This is true how we operate. The most convoluted thing. It's not plain English. Instead of saying the deadline must be submitted no later than, it could say it's available starting on February 24th, and the application deadline is May 31st. But it must be submitted no later than. Like it has these... That's just true legal fashion. True lawyer fashion. It's like when a lawyer writes whereas, or, I'm like, you can just get rid of that. That's fine. Start your sentence off. It's fine. There's such antiquated stuff in our fields. And, and the interesting thing is that I worry about now I'm reading that deadline is what happens for people who are in rural areas who don't have a lot of opportunities for supervising attorneys.
Yes.
So you set this deadline, but for example, I live in Imperial Valley where there's less attorneys, and this is a couple hours east of me. And there's attorneys out there, but there's not a whole lot. So if you live there and there's like 5 attorneys, right, in one of the cities, but none of them want to supervise you, then what do? Right? Or if you put all this effort into one, you're at May 30th, he's like, I don't want to do it after all.
I was on Facebook and somebody posted, I'm having trouble. A lot of people are having trouble finding attorneys to do this because of these certain restrictions, mostly the 4-year required. And what my response to that was reach out to the bar associations.
Yeah, your local bar association.
So if there's like a Latinx bar association of Southern California or this person, I could tell that they were Vietnamese on Facebook. So I said, reach out to them because in bar exam drills, reached out to them and we've been really in good supportive communication every time we talk. These members of the bar associations, they really want to help you and they really want to network. They do like scholarship for law students and stuff. It's really great and really they'll help you get that 300 in, especially if you're open to not getting paid for it, right? Everyone can use help.
And I think that's going to be an issue too, though, is because how many attorneys are going to be willing to pay people right now? Well, in my area, I can't attest to everywhere else, but I know that even with the law firm I work at, there's less work that I'm associated with. There's less work. Even in my own private practice, January was somehow a good month to me. I've actually brought in some decent clientele and stuff, I think, potentially, and it's the first good month in like a year. year, honestly, since this whole COVID thing happened. How many attorneys can afford to take someone on right now? And especially you're talking about attorneys 4 years in practice who might be doing okay at this point, but still struggling to be consistent. Like, that's a whole other burden on them. It'll be interesting.
So I'm going to application right now because I saw something in the provisional license FAQs that had to do with new lawyer training or something like that. And I wonder if this is, it gets kind of confusing because is this for, so there's two groups. There's the group that graduated in 2020 that they're allowed to have a law license in light of the pandemic and everything, but they have to still take the bar exam in the next year and a half, right? However, there's this other group, which I think we're more talking about now, is this 1390 retroactivity. See, so does that May 31st deadline apply to the first group or the second group, right? It's
I think it's second group. So, because they specify under license C, and I think section C is that, yeah. So section C is the newer trainings that refer to, it's the order itself. So, yeah, so section C refers to the, no, maybe not. No, let me see.
So that's why I pulled up, if you look under the title application.pdf, I may put this as available I may put this in the comments of the YouTube and the of this podcast because we're trying to navigate all these. And I was trying to do this myself, and that's why I'm so grateful that you're willing to do it with me.
Yeah, no, of course.
It's so convoluted and it's like, and confusing. It's kind of like, why, like. Okay.
So I think everyone has to do, I think anyone who's passed the bar with the 1390 from July 2015 on, and all the new attorneys who are working on this program, I think they have to do that course. I don't think it's I think everyone has to do it, right?
Is there a deadline on that?
I'm sure there's going to be, and it may just be something we don't have access to. So, like, it might be on there because in the actual state bar, when I got licensed, they make you do 16 MCLEs, 16 hours of MCLEs, or is it 12? It doesn't matter. They make you do MCLEs through the state bar, and they're free. Well, not really free, but, they give them to you for free.
Part of your dues.
Right. So they give them to you for free, and it's 12 hours. It's a good amount. And they do give you an additional 14, actually, because they give you the 12 of them are required. You have to do them through the MCLEs, but there's a professional responsibility one that's 2 hours for free. And that's an ethics one that I just completed, actually, for my next round of licensing. But they make you do that, and they set the deadline in the course on there. So, like, when I got licensed, I was sworn in May 2019, and I had to complete them by March 2020. So I'm sure it's going to be a lot more strict with this because I was already a licensed attorney. I'm imagining they're going to give them a couple months to complete this stuff, at best, because they're going to be like on top of your. And I wonder if they're going to give them credit though for 300 of those hours for the courses they do.
Right.
That's a good question. Like if there's 25 hours of program that they have to do, I wonder if they'll get that towards 300.
Well, okay, to back up at the top of this application.pdf thing that I printed out, the cool thing I look here, I'm trying to look for all the good stuff out of this. So it says, the second sub bullet point of the second bullet point, it says you do not need a positive moral character to apply, but you have to submit it. And I just want to put it out there for the audience that super long, like I think mine took, I want to say 10 months to approve.
I was 6.5.
Oh, really? Because I had a friend. So when I think of you, Brendan, I think ex-military. Thank you for your service to us and to the country. But I had another friend that was a Coast Guard, and it got approved in a month and a half. So I think my theory, which your time kind of blew that out of the water, if you're tied in with the military, you know what I mean? They give you all these things where they don't really have to examine you. For me, I'm initially from Canada. I have all this kind of stuff in my past that it takes some looking into. Somebody else I've heard it's taken over a year. So anyway, so what they're saying is so long as you've submitted it, you're good.
I guess they want to make sure you're starting the process because at the same time too, they don't want, this program's actually pretty long if you think about it, right? It's actually a pretty long program because it goes to 2022. What they probably don't want is to have someone pass shouldn't be practicing, who wouldn't be qualified as a moral character, practicing law, even provisionally.
Right. Because I guess if it's a negative determination, they call it, right?
Yeah.
Like, so if they find out, you did some really bad stuff in the past, at least they have that information to yank your license, right?
Right.
Provisional license, your retroactive license or whatever.
Right. they can basically say, hey, you gotta stop this. June 1st, 2022. I mean, this program's actually really long, which is weird that they have such
That's for the first group, though.
Is it?
Yeah, it's 2022. When they first did the first order, it said, we're going to give licenses. You have to take your bar exam, and your whole provisional license will not last forever. It will end in 22 unless we extend it. I don't know if it's fair. I don't want to say fair because there's a lot of people there's this whole diploma privilege movement out there. Whoever is unaware of it, I don't even know if you're aware of it or not. Their whole thing is they don't want to take a bar exam anymore. They're saying that bar exam, so yeah, it's only valid until 2022.
So the interesting about the diploma privilege, I have concerns with that. And I'll tell you the only reason I have concern is that every state is different, right? So I think the diploma privilege should only apply to your law school if you went to a school within that state and you learn that state's evidence and civil procedure. And the reason I say that though is because it is so easy to muck those things up, right? Because like if you go to law school in California, most of the time they'll be able to take a California evidence course or a California civil procedure course, right? They have those as elective units. Like I went to law school in Minnesota. The only reason I knew CCP was because I worked at a law firm in California.
I'm gonna cut this out, Brandon, because I think this could be its own whole podcast, and we can invite diploma privileged people to come on it.
It's actually good that you said that though, because like even too, like I've always thought they should change law school. It should be 2 years substance, 1 year of required internships.
Right, and you could talk about this with them. Yeah, I'm gonna reach out to them.
I'd love to talk to them about that.
So in 2022, it would expire. Your quote, your temporary diploma privilege, they call it provisional here, it would expire. But for the second group, the 1390 group, which I really think this podcast is aimed towards.
So I'm reading right here, it says the provisional license establishment pursuant to California rule be expanded to include individuals who scored 1390 between July 2015 and 2020, regardless of year of law graduation, right? The provisional license program under this rule shall terminate June 1st, 2022, unless the court expands it. It's the second page about the first bullet point. So there's a deadline to June 1st, 2022 also.
What this is if you don't do your 300 hours or whatever else, then that one will also, so that's important that we talk about that. Yeah.
You have to get your 300 hours in. And for some people...
Here's the submitted to the State Bar by May 31st.
Right. See, applications shall not be accepted after that date. Such a short time frame. Again, because if you're in a rural area and there's no attorney there and you're like, okay, I'm going to go on a Saturday and go work with this attorney in a city, you're going to have to be reaching out to people and stuff, So it's interesting.
Oh, wait, it's short, but it's actually a lot longer than May 31st. To get your 300 hours, it's saying...
Yeah, the 300 hours are longer, but I'm saying you only have this window to find an attorney and apply, or between February 24th and May 31st. And I think that's such a short window. I think people should have until August.
Oh, do you have to put that person's name, though, on the application? I don't think so, Brandon. Yeah, I don't think so. The supervising attorney. You just need to do that by... I think that's it, Brandon. Okay, so anybody who hears about this, just get this thing in by May 31st. I'm going to repeat it back to you, and I think it'll work better that way. So back on the first page of application.pdf, I see it says here, the one thing I think that's cool is it lets you skip the MPRE, which I think is pretty sweet.
Right.
It lets you, if you take this new attorney training, because it's not a test, it's just a training, right? Don't you think that's pretty cool?
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And the new attorney training, is that part of the thing that you had to do, or it's different? It's that 15 MCLE or 12 M?
That's when you get sworn in. So I think that's separate and independent of this.
Okay.
So that's just MCLEs that they make you do. Like it's basically a mental health thing for an hour, taking care of yourself, and then like how to not screw up your client's trust account, stuff like that.
All right. I like this so far. It's looking a lot better than I thought it would, actually. Because if you do live in, you're getting back to your concern about a rural area, you have basically till June 1st, 2022 to get that. That's kind of a long time to get 7.5 weeks worth of work done.
My whole issue is the time to get the application submitted. I just think it should be a little longer than that.
So what do we need there? Not much, right? You just get that in? Oh, wait. So maybe you do need to find an attorney, because how do they figure that 75% $75 waiver thing? Again, very confusing.
Yeah, so basically it seems like like you have to have an attorney, you have to have a supervising attorney, you have to have your time in, and all completed by May 30th. The application has to be submitted by May 31st. Now the scary,
I don't know when the supervising attorney has to submit back.
I would imagine it'd have to be May 31st, 2021, and I'll tell you why though, because they're going to submitting your application, right?
It's funny because we're using logic rather than words,
because it's never clear.
We're trying to what do they call it? It's kind of like the dormant commerce clause, we're trying to imply a rule out of what they're saying.
Oh, it's so great. But I would imagine that's what it is though, because like you said, they have to determine where you're going to be, who you're going to be with, right? One of the things though I wonder is what happens if you submit it May 31st, it gets rejected? Like what happens at that point? Like, I mean, I'm sure they're going to have, I'm sure they're still working out it's only been open for 3 days. They're still working all these things out. But I mean, are you just SOL at that point? Or do you have a chance to correct any errors that may have come into place,
Yeah. Like how hard are they going to be? But how could they reject it then would be the next question.
Because they're still humans. Let's say they didn't see let's say you submitted your moral character, but that on their end, they didn't see it. So they reject it, right?
Well, then I'm sure, how you get like receipts?
Right.
Keep your receipt. Then maybe you could say, here's my receipt. So you can't reject it or something like that. I mean, I get that concern, but I think, I'm just worried about this window that pops by. I think they can really get you on that one.
Right.
Or will they get you on that one? Is that unreasonable to say because you were, isolating yourself and you haven't really had a chance to talk to your law school classmates and you have no idea about this thing? Now you're in June, right? June of this year, and it's mid-June, and you're like, what? I could have got my license? I think that's the biggest concern. But I think we went through it all, didn't we? So now I'm down to 1, 2, 3. The top of page 3, I'm just looking. I think this is all by June 1st. Then your provisional license becomes permanent.
But it should be interesting because I am curious as to watch this program unfold for obviously for a variety of different reasons. Because it's fantastic news for people. I hope it provides more access to legal resources for people who can't afford it. And I'm hoping that some of these people just take up arms and go open a nonprofit, like go do something like that, go something big and see. I think it's just about time the score was lowered.
Right.
I just think it was about time.
Thank you, Brandon. Thanks for doing this with me because I wouldn't have been. I was trying to do it on my own, and I was thinking I would just stop because it's just so confusing and
it's always fun to go through these things with somebody else to try to figure out because you're like, hey, what about this?
So, right.
Always.
Thank you. And everyone, watch out for our next one. Hopefully, it'll be. I have one that's still raw footage that I haven't edited. It's where. If you look back, we're creating our own civil procedure question. And I still have that one, so that could be the next episode. Or, which we kind of touched upon in this episode, it could be an episode on diploma privilege, which I think is a super huge, but it's the question of, will anybody who's an advocate for diploma privilege come talk with us about it?
I think that's an important conversation to have. Because like I said, I don't think you and I are on the side against it. I just think there's questions like that need to be answered.
Right. So there's your teaser, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.